Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to the Rough Cut. Today we have Aisling Force, who is going to talk to us about adventure scientists, which is kind of a unique type of citizen science effort that maybe some of you out there can get involved in. Aisling came here in 2015 from Arizona, and she got her master's at Arizona State University in the sustainability science,
Yeah, the Department of Sustainability. I got a master's of sustainability solutions there.
Sustainability solutions, and she worked on international development and tourism, I think in Mexico, right?
I did some work in Mexico and Costa Rica as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she's also a professional river guide, and she's guided around the world. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And thanks to everybody here that is joining live as well as online. I appreciate you guys all joining and learning a little bit about Adventure Scientists, an organization based right here in Bozeman. We work regionally to globally on projects that require data collection from the outdoors. How many of you here today were aware of Adventure Scientists before coming in? Okay. I know that somebody here was a volunteer. How about a few of the others that raised your hands? What did you know about Adventure Scientists? Just heard. Okay, great, wonderful. How about you?
I had a couple running friends help out.
Do you remember which project it was? Or?
I believe it was the small plastics.
Okay, great. Was there somebody else that raised their hand?
I think you guys maybe
a staff member?
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, perfect. Well, we'll hear about all of those projects today and dive into a lot of what we do at Adventure Scientists. So we are an organization that was established in 2011. Over the last 7 years, we have grown a lot, particularly in a few areas: our mission, our impact, and the type of projects that we take on. In fact, all of those are very related. My goal today is to make more aware of what we do at Adventure Scientists. I want more people to be aware, especially here at MSU, so that we can leverage opportunities for us to support research. I will describe a bit about our approach to data collection and conservation. I will highlight a few examples of projects as examples of our work. I will also describe how we collaborate with partners. Please keep your questions in mind for the end, because there will be a decent amount of time to cover those. So I work at Adventure Scientists as a project creation coordinator. I've been at the organization for the last 1.5 years. My job there is to find, vet, and build new projects for us to take on. I feel super lucky to work at a place that allows me to combine two of my passions: my love of the outdoors and my desire to help protect it for future generations. My deep connection to the outdoors started in my childhood, growing up in the Sonoran Desert. I spent many weekends and vacations camping, hiking, and rafting with my family. My commitment to the outdoors really solidified during 13 years working as a whitewater rafting guide. For the last 10 years, I've climbed and descended rugged terrain on my mountain bike, and for the last 3 years, I've learned to ski. Now, these are just a few of many skill sets that support the work that we do at Adventure Scientists. My pursuit of a graduate degree in sustainability confirmed my devotion to really give back through sound science. Now I get to use my background and creatively build new projects that require data collection from the outdoors so that we can support our partners' research as well as their conservation initiatives. At Adventure Scientists, our mission is to equip partners with data collected from the outdoors. Everything that we do happens because of our partnerships with these types of groups. We work with scientists, directors, program managers from universities, nonprofit organizations, as well as government agencies. Ultimately, we envision a day, you can see it right there, when the task of collecting data no longer limits our ability to solve environmental issues. To do so, like I've already said, we focus on getting our partner scientists the data they need to support both their current as well as future research and to have real-world impact. In addition to our partners, the other group that makes the work that we do possible is our volunteers. Our volunteers are members of the outdoor adventure community. They range from day hikers to expedition mountaineers to class 5 kayakers as well as mountain bikers. We work with this community for many reasons, namely that they're as comfortable in the outdoors as they are in their own living rooms. All of our volunteers apply for jobs with adventure scientists, where working with us is a privilege. Members of this community that end up becoming our volunteers are those that, 1, possess the outdoor skills required to remain safe during the course of a project, 2, have a history of conservation pursuits, 3, have a strong ability to share their experiences, and 4, understand and can navigate the specific environmental challenges of remaining safe in remote and backcountry settings. Anybody here have experience working with volunteers in data collection? Yes? What, can you tell me a little bit about your experiences with volunteers?
Well, they volunteered to help with field work,
Great. In what type of data collection and
collecting lake mud.
lake mud? Cool. Nice. Was there another hand or is that the only one? Great.
Same. I've got a lot of undergrads and grads who volunteer to help us.
Collecting lake mud?
Yellowstone hot springs.
Okay, great. Awesome. And some people have participated in projects as a volunteer as well. Anybody outside of adventure scientists, have there been other opportunities for volunteering in data collection? Yes.
I helped my mother map GPS coordinates of white bark pine seedlings, my reclamation sites for her PhD.
Great. Well, that's awesome. So working with volunteers is really key to the work that we do. At Adventure Scientists, we understand that data collection requires funding, time, and skills that are often unavailable. From issues such as water pollution to wildlife trafficking, or here it says deforestation and antibiotic resistance, many of the environmental issues we face could be addressed if these key data were collected. As a result, we have built a global network of volunteers from the outdoor community and a platform that empowers them to collect this otherwise difficult to attain data. Through our volunteers, we say that we're capable of collecting data at any scale in any environment. We specialize in recruiting, training, and managing these volunteers, and we work with the outdoor community because we know that they're competent at collecting research-grade data for our partners. Then our partners are empowered to use these data to then influence conservation as well as inform policy and management. So some of you are researchers here today. You've learned that already a little bit. In your research, have you found it difficult to acquire data from certain environments? And it's okay if you don't have anything to share. Nobody? Working on private lands. So sometimes accessing that jurisdiction can be challenging. For sure. That is a challenge. Yeah, we often don't work a lot in private lands for that reason, and we do work a lot on public lands instead, given just the acquiring permits or working with landowners can be a challenge for sure. So that's good to hear. So now talking a little bit about our reach at Adventure Scientists. I'll move to the next slide. This has some nice statistics. So we have sent thousands on data collection missions around the world. We aim to make data collection accessible from anywhere. I like to say that the sky is the limit or at least 21,000 feet above sea level, as are the depths of the ocean. On here, it might be kind of small, but you can see that we have collected samples from beneath the ocean surface at 567 feet, excuse me. So we have a very scalable model. Our network is able to expand along with our volunteer opportunities. And last year alone, you can see that there was nearly 28,000 days on expeditions in 7 continents and in all 5 oceans. We have developed the systems to leverage the thousands venturing into the outdoors each year and the millions of hours that they spend in the places that they love. We work with these adventurers to ensure that they collect high quality data. So these are backpackers, mountaineers, and mountaineers, backpackers, and collecting scat samples from Alaska to Afghanistan on species ranging from fox to bears to support Harvard Medical School's research into antibiotic resistance by better understanding the role of the Enterococcus genome. Kind of an interesting study. These are also backpackers placing and monitoring camera traps on the Olympic National Forest to track pine martens and support the US Forest Service in protecting these species. These are also backcountry skiers and snowboarders collecting snow cores from above 15,000 feet to support our partner at the University of Venice to better understand freshwater reserves and glacial melt. In this next part of the presentation, I'm going to dive deeper into a few of these projects in a bit more detail so that you can get a better picture of what we do. So in 2016, adventure scientists completed a 3-year project working with the American Prairie Reserve on a wildlife monitoring effort. The American Prairie Reserve launched an effort in 2001 to become the largest grasslands and wildlife protected area in the continental US. You can see that it's located in northeastern Montana. How many of you are aware of the American Prairie Reserve? Pretty cool effort out there. In this reserve, there is an identified need to better understand the presence and diversity of wildlife. We worked with the reserve to implement an effort and collect key data on wildlife there, increase the awareness of their effort on the reserve, and document the human experience of living on the prairie. Our volunteers were responsible for collecting baseline data year-round on wildlife using these grasslands to support management and the protection of these species. This has included some coordination with local landowners to help wildlife migrating through the landscape better. So a lot of these animals require expansive terrain to really thrive. Each one of our volunteers committed to 3 months on the prairie. Combined, they hiked over 5,000 miles, on the reserve's 350,000 acres. They collected data in temperatures ranging from above 100 degrees Fahrenheit to below 40, kind of crazy. They placed and monitored camera traps as well as hiked transects to record their wildlife observations. In the process, they monitored for about 29 species there and made 20,000 wildlife observations. This is a great example of a project showing that we're able to cover a large landscape, the commitment of our volunteers, and our partners' ability to really leverage our data to influence change and protect wildlife. That was the circumstance there. Somebody here today has mentioned our microplastic study already. Last year, we completed that 3-year initiative where we were studying the presence and extent of microplastic pollution for our partner scientists at the University of the Atlantic. This project involved hikers, sailors, sea kayakers, on rivers in North America to South America to Asia. They collected 1 liter samples of water from our lakes, oceans, and rivers at the global scale. In addition to this, there was a watershed study on the Gallatin. We wanted to do this study to understand microplastics in more detail at a smaller scale and in a headwaters system. Over the course of the project, our volunteers collected nearly 3,000 samples, and microplastics was found in about 70% of these. We have created one of the most extensive data sets on microplastics to date, and data from this project has been used by businesses, governments, as well as individuals to limit their plastic waste. This has even included the Republic of Palau using our data to help create a marine protected area. If you or someone that you know could use this data, contact us. We're currently accepting requests for this data set and really want it to be out there and used by those that can really make change with it. There's a great video that I wanted to share today, but apparently it would have been a silent video and the noise would have been really useful. So instead of playing it here today, I'm gonna recommend that everybody check it out on our website. So it's a reason to go and check out our nice little web page there. It's on the home page and it's only about 3 minutes long. This video highlights our partner scientist, Abby Barrows, and how she was able to address a big problem, big question by working with adventure scientists. It'll be fun. A project that we launched last year with the University of Arizona involves hikers and mountain bikers collecting data on the presence of butterflies in their habitat. We piloted the effort in 5 states, as you can see here: California, Washington, Arizona, Utah, and here in Montana. This year, we plan to expand the project based on the needs of our partners and our evidence of continuing data gaps. Data from this project will be used by the U.S. Forest Service in actions and management to protect these pollinators as well as conserve biodiversity. The agency is planning to use this data to restore habitat and improve fire planning that will involve where they do controlled burns as well as the timing of these burns is one of the identified outcomes. Data from the first year is still being processed. We're processing data because through these observations, there needs to be expert verification of all of these beautiful butterflies that were identified by our volunteers, as well as the flowering plants. But so far, we know that we have identified over 50 species of butterflies, as well as over 100 species of wildflowers. There will be volunteer opportunities for this project coming up this year, so if you're interested. A project that we are launching this year with World Resources Institute involves hikers and sea kayakers collecting samples on big leaf maples. This is actually a photo of a big leaf maple there. I didn't know what they looked like until this project came about. This is the beginning of a multi-year effort and will expand to other species and other geographies. Ultimately, our data will support the development of genetic libraries of tree species used in the commercial market. Technologies can then use these data to more easily detect legal versus illegally harvested wood. That's the goal. This project will support better enforcement and regulation of legal timber trade. So I've already mentioned that we've begun recruiting for the volunteers for this project, and they will be collecting data throughout the summer and fall across the range of the big leaf maple, which is located from California all the way up to British Columbia. So if some of you here want to go out and do a fun trip, that might be a fun opportunity. So from these project snapshots, you may notice that we measure our success based on the impact that we have. Unlocking solutions is the center here. I call them conservation outcomes, and they are our goal. So far, we have helped protect wildlife, supported habitat restoration, and even influenced greater sustainability in product manufacturing. Beneath these conservation outcomes, or here, outside of the bullseye, you can see a couple other levels where we measure our impact. The second layer there is the behavioral change among our volunteers. Through surveys that we send out to our volunteers post-experience, we notice that they change the way that they behave after participating in a project. And then the third layer is issue awareness through our social and popular media. These other two layers, the outer layers of this bullseye, are important to us, but secondary to those conservation outcomes. It remains our focus. Are any of you here involved in projects or designing projects that will have implications for decision-making in some form, whether that's policy, management, regulation? Yeah?
Everything I do.
Everything?
You may not understand the link, but.
No, we all draw the link. We all draw the link differently, right? And it is based on the perspective of the researcher, right? How that link is drawn. So can you share a little bit about how your research has implications for?
Well, I guess I think some of the work that I do is methodological. I'm just trying to understand how we draw inference about how ecosystems work from the data.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little hard to tie to a decision, but
Yeah.
it feeds the larger science engine
Right.
that there are incremental steps there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So understanding incremental work, how that's linked to a decision is not always.
Right. Right. I get it. Oftentimes there's multiple links along the chain until you get to that end result. So what type of data do you collect or research are you involved in?
I do a lot of work in whole strain metabolism, strain process carbon and nitrogen.
Oh, cool.
It has implications to stream water quality,
Mm-hmm.
pollution control, pollution management.
Nice.
Individual projects that I take on, it's pretty hard to tie that directly.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever try and make the connections outside of so you do a research project. Do you ever work to build those relationships and make that connection to
I spend pretty much all my time doing research.
Cool. That's great. That's really important too. Did anybody else raise their hand here? I'll go to you first in the front.
Reclamation type things, whitebark pine type things, riparian type things, all things that are commissioned by the people who need the data.
Mm-hmm. That's a way to really draw the line close if somebody's asking you for the data, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. And you back there?
I work on wild native bees, so
Mhm.
I'm trying to understand what we have in Montana. And then try to understand what we have and provide baseline data.
Mm-hmm. And are you working with government agencies then on that, on providing data to them, or who would, you said you worked with
Yeah.
private lands a little bit too?
Yeah, for that project, it was local farmers.
Okay.
These are both projects that are funded by
Okay.
environment employee here at MSU.
Right. Awesome. Cool. Yes, and you?
We just turned the pumps on a 2.5 million gallon a day selenium bioremediation project up in the Elk River, Canada.
Oh, wow.
We're
That sounds
waiting to
really
see-
interesting.
waiting to see how the results will come out.
Yes, I'd love to hear more about that one too. So we realize that a lot of our partners don't necessarily have the relationships in place to influence decision-making. However, we all draw that line differently, right? As such, we're really excited and willing to work with our partners in building these relationships to help draw that line from data to impact. And I know that it all depends on the perspective. So at least in the way that we measure impact, we're really excited to work with our partners. This may be accomplished by using our connections at government agencies and businesses, and really just leveraging our network overall. We recognize that it's the quality of our data that allows our projects to have impact, and we prioritize data quality and use strict protocols co-designed with our partners. We apply several QA/QC steps for all of our projects in support of best practices in field research. Overall, there are several tools that enable us to be successful in our approach, and that's going to be the next area that I'm covering today. The first tool you can see on this slide are set criteria for every project that we take on. So given the fact that we're a nonprofit organization, we're also mission driven. So we look for 3 key traits in every project. I often phrase these in the form of questions, and I ask these questions again and again in my work to help ensure that a project is a right fit for everybody involved. And also to recognize if a project is just a right fit or not for our organization as well. So the first question goes after this first criteria here that I will ask is, does the project address an environmental issue where a lack of access to data has limited our ability to find a solution? That can be said more plainly. Is there a data gap? Right. Second, does the project draw a clear line from data collection to conservation outcomes? This can be said more plainly. Do we have a chance to have real world impact out there by collecting these data? And does the project clearly need the outdoor skill set? And this is an important one for us as well. So we recognize that sometimes we're just not the right ones for the job. Sometimes it's field techs, graduate students, community groups that are better fit to collect these data. And that's important for us. We need to take the step back and not always be the right person for the job. A second tool that allows us to be successful in our approach are our volunteer management systems. To recruit, train, and manage our volunteers, we have established systems and approaches that allow us to efficiently and effectively get the job done. We leverage social media to recruit viable candidates. We maintain relationships with past volunteers, meaning that many of them come back to us looking for their next experience. We also work with what we call celebrity volunteers. So this includes female pro surfer Lakey Peterson, as well as pro snowboarder Jeremy Jones. These ambassadors are able to attract hundreds of volunteers when they say that they work with us, which can be overwhelming, but it's also great. We have platforms to screen volunteer candidates for the available positions. We co-design all of the tools to train our partners and test their skills at maintaining competent in the outdoors and following protocols. And we also have staff dedicated to managing our volunteers throughout their project experience. We also use several steps to ensure data quality. First, in the projects that we choose, there are 2 types of data collection that work really well for adventure scientists, and that's either where we collect a physical sample or we use some type of technology in the field, like a sensor or a water logger, camera trap, a lot of examples there. Second, documentation. For each project, we document our processes and can develop a quality assurance project plan, which I'm sure some of you might be familiar with that is reviewed by our science advisory board. Third, volunteer screening. I've already talked about our volunteers a little bit. Our volunteers must demonstrate that they are comfortable in the outdoors. And this, like I've said, allows them to really focus on the protocols that they need to follow in order to collect the data for our partners. 4, volunteer training. Our trainings are custom built for every project. This is identified both by our partners as well as ourselves, whether or not we need online training or in-person training that can take place during 1 to 3 day field events. And that often has to do with the extent of what our volunteers have to do in the field. 5, volunteer communications. We will interact with volunteers prior to their trips, ensuring that questions are addressed and protocols are understood. Volunteer testing is the 6th one. We require every volunteer to pass a test every 6 months. This can be during a single project or if they come back to us for a second season as well. So with, for example, with this pollinator project, given the fact that we're going to be working a lot of in the same areas, we might have some volunteers coming back to us. So they're going to have to go through the whole screening and testing again. We integrate protocols, so that's the 7th step. We program our apps to prompt volunteers with questions to confirm that they have followed protocols. An example of this would be in our microplastics project. There was a step that asked, did you remember to cap your bottle underwater? If you didn't cap your bottle underwater, that air exposure can influence the amount of microplastics in there. So it's really important to ensure the data quality in that specific project. We also use cameras. So we identify or determine a random group of our volunteers that we're going to send out with GoPro cameras. And that helps us ensure that they are following those protocols as well. And then the last step, this is the 9th one, we monitor our data. So there's somebody on staff here or at our office that will be monitoring the data as it comes in to help ensure its accuracy. Another tool that we use that allows us to be successful is just really recognizing that everything happens because of our partners. We understand that relationships are critical to getting a lot of amazing work done, and it's clear to us that we're just one piece of a large puzzle to accomplish research, and have impact. That's why we build custom agreements with every project we take on. We also take time to build relationships with those groups to allow everybody that can benefit, or hopefully everybody that can benefit, that they do so, and especially for what they bring to their projects. Sometimes an agreement might take the form as an MOU with government agencies. Sometimes we establish challenge cost share agreements. And these agreements allow all parties to establish expectations for the project, its process, as well as its outcomes. We find agreements to be very important for our work. This slide here just shows some of our partners. Some of them are really critical to one project, other ones to really upholding the entire mission of the organization. So another tool that we use is what I call telling the story. I've already talked about how our volunteers are so crucial to the work that we do. However, another reason why working with this community is so great is that they're amazing storytellers. There's a rich history of storytelling in the outdoor adventure community. Our volunteers are journalists, filmmakers, writers, artists, and more. And they can really help spread the awareness of our projects, the environmental issues that we're helping to address, as well as the amazing work of our partners. We find that this element can be really great for some of our partners, not all of them. Sometimes there's data sensitivities with projects, and we really recognize that, and we'll work with our partners as well. Other times they're really excited to spread the word about their work, about the environmental issue and whatnot. So it's totally dependent on the project. And then the last tool that we use is a really standard development process. So here's a fun little walkabout that you can see of how projects move through our pipeline. So we're always excited to learn about research that we can support when a new project idea comes to us, which is most often through our website. So step 1, you can see that they fill out a project inquiry form. We ask a lot of questions. This is a very iterative process with us. So I've mentioned a few of these questions in addressing those key project criteria. We'll also explore the scale, scope, and approach with our partners, including their theory of change. A final step after you've worked through the whole process there, we'll be signing an agreement, like I've said, finalizing design of a project, and then launching the project. When we launch a project, it still takes a little bit of time for volunteers to be in the field, or what we call boots on the ground in a way, or fins in the water. So I would love to know about ways that adventure scientists can support your and others' work here. I know that I'm just not aware of a lot of things that are happening on campus. So like I said at the beginning, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to come here today, was to share with you about adventure scientists as well as learn about research that's happening here. We really enjoy exploring ideas together and encourage our partners to think big and dream about what access to any data at any scale would allow you to accomplish. I've kind of plugged this throughout the speech as well. Another great opportunity to explore with us is becoming a volunteer. There are 2 projects that we're actively recruiting for. Those are a couple of the ones that I highlighted. This is both our pollinator and timber project. I would check out our website to learn more on these. I do have some flyers here as well if you're interested in being a volunteer or interested in exploring a project idea with us. Now I'm gonna pause. I'm really happy that I was able to cover that much time. Does anybody have any questions about the work that we do, about me, or about how working with us can happen? Yes.
Can you back up and slide up?
Yes, of course.
So I almost never have money in hand to do stuff like this. I have to go get it. So when is it appropriate to come to you in terms of the proposal process with the NSF or something?
That was a great question, and I always appreciate when people bring up that word early on, the funding word. So we don't expect or anticipate partners to have funding on hand when they come to us. That's a great thing, and we do provide data collection as a service, so we are contracted to do a job. However, that funding piece can really happen collaboratively and during that development process. So we recognize that funding is an issue, right? And that's something that I mentioned earlier on in the speech. So we can really collaborate on that and identify funding sources. So an additional service that we've started to offer our partners is what we're calling grant writing and research. So where somebody on staff will identify funding sources and help develop those grants with our partners to then have our partners lead in submitting them. We will rarely take the lead in submitting grants. That could be because of our eligibility in certain areas. And it's just also the fact that we kind of play that role as a contractor as well. So we definitely don't want money to limit our ability to explore a project or launch a project with a partner. That should not be a limiting factor, is what I mean to say. Yeah, that's a really good question. Thanks for bringing it up.
So how did that work in the plastics project? That was like everywhere. You had
It was.
things going on.
Yeah. So the microplastics project had 2 formats, or there was really 2 initiatives in there. So in the global microplastics project, that was what we call like an at-large project, or I refer to as an opportunistic model. So where volunteers they could go out anywhere and collect data, which makes it a little bit more efficient on our end for recruiting and training our volunteers, as opposed to a project that requires volunteers to adopt the site, maybe go back to the same site. That's a little bit of a different model. So it was efficient in the sense that it didn't require a lot of like concentrated funds. And we got hired by our partner scientist, Abby Barrows, to do the job. And our model has changed over the years as well. before we were working on a lot of smaller projects where we played a matchmaker between a scientist and a volunteer. And we've moved away from that a little bit because it hasn't allowed us to have the type of impact that we want in a way. So now we're working on larger scale, longer term projects that we can really see that type of impact, as opposed to saying like one researcher that needs one volunteer to go out to the crazy remote mountain peak and collect some lichen for them. Hopefully that makes sense a little bit. Yeah.
And then you mentioned time. What do you anticipate as a long-term project?
Yeah, so a lot of the projects that we are exploring currently will take 3 to 5 years. But that's not to say that a 1-year initiative is not valuable either. The big thing with every project that we take on is just those 3 traits, making sure that we're addressing an issue where there's a lack of data, making sure that there's some type of conservation outcome that can be attained by collecting the data, and that we're the right people for the job, that it really requires the outdoor adventure skill set. If it addresses those 3 things, projects of all different scales can really be a fit. Yeah, so thank you. Yes.
So you said you kind of moved away from that matchmaking process.
Yeah.
I imagine that was pretty one sort of thing. I guess the impact wasn't as good, but I can see that being pretty useful for a lot of people.
Yeah.
As you grow and expand, could you see yourself kind of going back towards that? Or are you casting off on this direction pretty wholeheartedly?
It's not to say that we wouldn't do that with the matchmaker role, but like I just reiterated, the main issue is the fact that it just needs to fit those 3 traits. So oftentimes when we find that it's just a one-on-one match, that's not a characteristic that we're finding with those projects. And there are a few other groups out there that play that role a little bit in the sense of a matchmaker between somebody that needs data and the people that can go out there and get it. Although oftentimes that's not in the context of remote or backcountry settings. But one group that comes to mind right now is SciStarter. So we work in a little bit of a niche of what a lot of people call citizen science. So SciStarter is a platform that has, I don't know, hundreds of citizen science projects where those citizen scientists can find opportunities for them to really support or give back.
Would you spell that? What is that?
SciStarter. Yeah, this is SCI and then starter, all one word, .org. This is actually a program out of Arizona State University. Yeah.
Have any of these projects been supported by federal grants like National Science Foundation?
It's a good question too.
And then the other question I have is who assumes liability for the,
We assume liability for,
and they've got medical, they're covered for medical injury or anything like that?
exactly. Yeah, we assume all liability while our volunteers are in the field. So that can be a big value too, working with us.
And so what about the funding?
Oh yeah, so funding in terms of NSF, we are currently exploring NSF support for our pollinator project. That's a bit more likely given the fact that we're working with a university scientist. So oftentimes it's those projects where we do have a university component that we would be able to apply for NSF. And
You're not directly applying to NSF though, are you?
not
The
us, so that would
university
be,
supplying as a grant.
exactly. So the university is applying for the grant and then we're written in as a sub-grantee or subcontractor. Because there's a few different ways that you can frame our role within a project. And we're still navigating this process. NSF is a monster and really understanding how we fit in that is an ongoing challenge. Yes.
Question. In terms of the demographics of your volunteers, do you find that, I don't know if this is something you track, like a lot of them are university students or like kind of like in the younger generations, or if it's across the board, that you're getting people from all kinds of walks of life and ages coming to be volunteers for Adventure Scientists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it depends on the project. Right, for what we're asking our volunteers to do, that will change the type of group that we're working with a little bit. So if we are trying to track and monitor jaguars in Costa Rica in the jungle there, that'll be a different type of volunteer than if we are collecting water quality samples in lakes in the Olympic National Forest. Very different types of volunteers. So yeah, it varies a lot. We can work with, I don't even know what our average volunteer age is, to be honest. But I interact with volunteers ranging from college students here to retirees. Kind of fun. Yeah. Yes, I will go to you in this, and okay, I'll go to the back.
Oh, okay. Going back to the
That's an additional service, yeah, to help launch a project. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be incorporated into the whole package. It wouldn't add to the costs.
if it got, you write yourself in.
Exactly.
If it got funded. You get
Yep.
it, but otherwise.
We wouldn't charge you, no. Yeah, that's a good point to make.
2 questions. So here in Bozeman, this year, there was the pollination.
Yes.
That's in the summer.
Yeah, it depends on access, which is dependent on snow. So the field sites are meadows, kind of high elevation meadows too. So it's likely that the field visits will take place from June through September. And the idea is to get repeat visitation at all of these sites. Ideally, it's 4 to 6 times.
Is that per volunteer or is it like a massive?
It's per site. Yeah. So with that model, we didn't want to require that volunteers go out 6 times during a season. So if you're going out from June to September 6 times, you're going out every other weekend, right? That's a little bit much to ask for every volunteer. Some people might be stoked on doing that. So instead, we identified that a successful model would be having volunteer teams, 2 teams, adopt the same sites. So they're alternating visits out there. So they're sharing in a way.
Where's our site here? Near Bozeman?
I don't know exactly where they are, but yeah, if you're curious, you should, yeah.
And then like they're high, you mountain bike to them.
Yeah, it can be, exactly, it's hiking, mountain biking. There will be trail access for
You
all
get
sites.
your team based on what.
So we never send volunteers out alone. That's just part of our deal. And if you have a partner, a team member that you would want to work with and volunteer, and that you are both able to pass the screening and testing process, then you can go out to the field together. Other times, if you don't have a team member that you want to work with and you both are competent, then we would help. That's the way that we play a little bit of a matchmaker role. We will match a couple volunteers together. Yeah. Have them go out.
And then my second question is just how big is the company?
For us,
Yeah.
so our organizational model.
Or just how large? Yeah, how large are you?
Yeah, so I've talked about how we've grown a lot in the last 7 years beginning in the few areas. Another area that I didn't mention is our staff members and our overall team. We are currently 13 staff. And when I joined the organization in 2016, I might be wrong on this, but I think that we were about 9. We've grown a bit, 8 or 9. Kind of fun. I was the first staff member that was full-time in project creation as well. Before my time, that was a role or responsibility that members took on in kind of a piecemeal fashion.
You're located in Bozeman.
We are
Website
located-
showed that.
We are located in Bozeman, and that is our website. Up here, before you leave, if you're interested, I would grab some brochures I have my business cards up here, and I appreciate participation in this presentation today. So I brought a couple of items. I guess I don't even know who I should give those to, but if you really want it, you should take it. All of our volunteers end up getting a little piece of gear from us as well. Are there any other questions before we end? Thank you guys so much for joining. I appreciate it.